Okay, great, thank you. Okay, let's begin. And I'd like to remind everyone to please put on your mask over the nose. Yes, uh, the correct way to wear it. Thank you very much for doing that. Okay, so we would like to, again, continue with the remarks. We would like to extend a warm welcome to Ronit Batra, who will be our student board member for the 2021-2022 school year.
Thank you.
Yeah, this will be Ronit's first meeting, and we're very pleased to have him on our board. At this time, since having a student board member is new to all of us, I thought it would be beneficial to clarify how voting works for a student board member. As per California Education Code, a student board member may cast preferential votes on all matters except those subject to closed session discussion. Preferential votes shall be cast prior to the official board vote and shall not affect the final numerical outcome of the vote. Preferential votes shall be recorded in the board meeting minutes, and what though the student board member its vote does not affect the final numerical outcome of a vote, by voting prior to the official board vote, it ensures that the student board member's opinion is taken into account before a board vote. As I mentioned, the meeting is being live streamed on this district channel, and a link to recording has been posted to the district's website. So I'd like to introduce my board members: Vice President Ken Mintz, Clerk Rachel Hurd, board members Laura Bratt
Good morning.
and Shelley Clark.
Good morning, everybody.
And Ronit, if you want to say.
Good morning.
And I am your president, Susanna Ordway. Please now join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, great, thank you. 6.0, report of action taken in closed session. There was no action taken in closed session to report out. May I have the motion to accept the minutes of June 15th and June 25, 2021?
So moved.
Second.
The motion was made by Board Member Clark and seconded by Board Member Hurd. Call out vote. Student Board Member Batra.
Aye.
Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Mintz.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Okay, and at this time, may I have a motion to accept today's open session agenda?
So moved.
Second.
The motion was made by Board Member Bratt and seconded by Board Member Mintz. Student Board Member Batra.
Aye.
Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Mintz.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Okay, 8.2, approval of consent agenda. Consent items are considered routine in nature and approved by combining them into a single vote. A member of the board or a member of the public may request that a consent item be removed from the consent agenda to be considered and voted on separately. There is a revision to the 11.1 item under the consent agenda. It is on the certificated personnel changes. Is there a request to move any item from consent? No? Okay, then may I have a motion?
Move approval of consent.
The motion was made by Board Member Hurd and seconded by Board Member Mintz. Call out vote. Student Board Member Batra.
Aye.
Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Mintz.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Great. 9.0, reports to the board. So we're going to go 9.1, public comments on non-agenda items. Public comment will be limited to no longer than 3 minutes, and the board cannot discuss any items not on the agenda for this meeting. The views expressed during public comment are those of the individual speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of the board or district staff. The district believes in an inclusive, welcoming, and safe environment for its meetings for all of our community. The board respects each individual's rights to express ideas and opinions. Pursuant to the applicable law and board policy, the board will not prohibit public criticism of the board or district. We kindly ask that when making public comments, you refrain from the use of profanity, exercise tolerance of others and their viewpoints, and exemplify model behavior. Please be mindful that district students may be watching. You are encouraged to address the board and the public in a respectful manner, such that all those observing, from children to adults, are made to feel welcome, safe, and respected. The board will not permit any disturbance or willful interruption of board meetings. Persistent or excessive disruption by any individual or group shall be grounds to terminate the privilege of addressing the board. Okay, so we've got kind of a stack of public comments, so I'm going to start. Okay. So I'm going to start with Scott Bennett. Yeah.
I'd like to say, first of all, it is not a privilege to serve and talk to the board. It is our right. And I would say that everybody in that room that wishes to make a public comment and does not want to wear a mask, step outside and make your public comment. It will be just as heard. And let me say, I served in the United States Army in psychological warfare and Iraqi freedom. I've been a resident of Danville since 1978. And I know for a fact that the mask considerations are going to violate, harm, and injure the health of our children. And you are hereby advised you will all be individually held liable, legally liable, for any injuries, any sicknesses, any illnesses, any damage whatsoever that is done to any of our children attending these schools if you put on a mask mandate. The American people, especially the soldiers, did not go to war, did not defend this Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, for the purposes of returning to a tyranny. And you are domestic enemies if you are infringing upon the constitutional rights of Americans. They have the right to life. That means children, young and old, have the right to live and breathe and move in their organic, natural space. That does not mean that they have to be forced to wear a mask. That certainly does not mean that they will be forced to take a vaccine that is now more and more being revealed by people like Dr. Mikovits, who I know personally, Dr. Tenpenny, Dr. Martin, and many others who are coming out with scientific medical evidence that is indicating that this vaccine has extraordinarily damaging effects on the DNA and mRNA by planting spike proteins that overwhelm the immune system and will eventually cause organ failure and death in the next 1 year to 18 months. So be advised, we will not be allowing our children to attend a school to wear a mask. If we have to pull them out of the school, we will. If we have to create alternative institutions for education, we will. And I will teach and I will run for the board if need be. And I hope everybody in this room will run for the board and remove every one of you that dares to stand against the constitutional rights of our children and damage their health. And I will run and I will beat all of you. And I hope everybody in this room will stand up and run for school board if one of those people does not allow the freedoms of your children to thrive. It is repugnant what we have done to our children. We have turned them into schizophrenic retards full of fear and dread. And that is not what I served in the United States military to return to. And that is not the country that I will continue to live in. Whatever we have to do to overthrow such tyranny, our founding fathers laid it down in the Declaration of Independence. And maybe that day is coming. This depends on you, school board. You have the choice. Either enforce the Constitution, allow the liberties, do not force masks, do not force vaccinations, or this will be the last day that you serve as a board member. You have been legally served notice. I am done.
Okay, next is Jackie Coda. Jackie?
I'm here. I'm just waiting apparently for a number to come up on a board. So anyway, I'll go ahead and begin. California Health and Safety Code 101080. It is incumbent upon you as a board to remind the Board of Supervisors who are actually passing illegal mandates with regard to masks that they do not have the right to do this. Whenever a local emergency is declared by a local health officer pursuant to the section, local health emergency shall not remain in effect for a period excess of 7 days unless it has been ratified. And not only that, they are supposed to review it every 30 days until the emergency is terminated. We are not in an emergency. It has been over a year and a half that we have been dealing with this tyranny with our children with regard to masks. You do not have a right to tell them that they are supposed to suffocate themselves. They actually have the right of informed consent. Why is it that our elected leaders are not pushing back on unelected bureaucrats such as health officers that are pushing down these illegal mandates? It is not a law that they can enforce masks. Once again, I'm going to say it is not a law. A mandate, a guideline is not a law. Promoting the use of a non-FDA approved emergency use authorized masks are unwarranted and illegal. Devices under EUA requires the wearers to be informed of the option to refuse a such device. Under U.S. Section Code 21, Section 360 BBB, the law is clear. Also, California Education Code 49005.8 prohibits the use of a physical restraint technique that obstructs the pupil's respiratory airway or impairs the pupil's breathing or respiratory capacity. I realize that that might be for unruly children, but why would you have a law, an ordinance like that for unruly children and also not enforce it for children who are not unruly? It is a violation of law for you to actually present yourself as a medical doctor and tell students that they have to wear a Class 2 medical device on their face. That is also a violation of law. You have an obligation to let every student know that they have informed consent and the right to refuse. Not only that, as a school district and also as a board, you are supposed to prevent them from discrimination. If this does not happen, you will see a mass exodus of parents forming parental education associations for their students because we will not allow our students to be controlled. This is not about science. These masks are dangerous. They're detrimental to the physiological and psychological development of children. You know that. And if you try to enforce this mandate or this order, you are guilty of child abuse.
Next is Kim. That's Kim and just a reminder again, the mask should be worn correctly over your nose. Oh,
Hi.
yeah.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, but I just want to also remind everyone to put your mask on correctly, and that would be over your nose. Thank you.
Okay, sorry.
Oh.
Thank you for having us here today. That was my son Finnegan. I'm here primarily because for him, because he has Down syndrome. And even though Finn has a medical exemption for a mask mandate, he's going to be in a classroom full of other kids and teachers who have masks on. And I feel for him because it's really hard for speech and language development to understand people with the mask on. He gets so much language still from reading lips and just being expressional with everybody. And my message is a little bit different in that I know you guys are following the California Department of Public Health and the CDC guidelines. I have more of a question for you as the board. How can we all work together? How can you guys help make the decision that we don't have to follow their guidelines? How as a board can you decide on your level what rules you want to make? Because I know you know all the statistics. People are giving you all the stats and telling you, the Delta variant, this and that. Like, you know everything. You know everything. We don't need to spew all that back to you. I just want to know how we work together. You guys help us make it a choice for the kids and not something that they have to do. Does anybody have an answer for that?
Fortunately, because this is public comment and not under agenda item, we can't not speak, but we will later have superintendent's report and maybe,
I wish there was a
more
way you could
information.
help us understand why, as a board, you're choosing to adopt these rules, because they are recommendations from the CDC, and I just feel like as a board, I would really hope that you guys would take more of a hard stand and make it optional. I know some private schools are making it optional. It just doesn't seem consistent across the board, and I just wish you could help us understand why. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments.
President Ordway, just because we're in non-agendized public comments, I just wanted to make the statement that I do have a superintendent's report after this. I am taking notes. I will respond as best I can to some of the issues that are raised.
Okay, next is Michael J. Anderson. He may be outside. Michael J. Anderson. Okay, then we'll move on to Lorena Gamez.
Basically, I want to just let everybody know that rights come from God, not from the state, not public health, not school boards, not Dr. Fauci, but from God alone. John Adams said, "You have the rights to all early governments, rights that cannot be repealed or restrained by human laws, rights deserved by the great legislator of our universe." Abraham Lincoln states that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom. In 1776, we came out of bondage with faith, understanding, and courage. Even against the great odds, we battled our way to achieve liberty. Liberty brings freedom. Our founding fathers realized that a creator is always above and greater than which he creates. They established the 3-vote system by which an informed citizen can control those acting in the name of government. The chain of command in this nation is as follows. 1, God created man. 2, man created the Constitution. 3, Constitution created government. The base of the power was to remain in we the people, not we the government, not we public health, not we Dr. Fauci, and not with the school board. In this case of Norton versus Shelby County, it states an unconstitutional act is not law. It confers no rights. It imposes no duties, affords no protection. It creates no office. It is in legal contemplation as inoperative as though it had never been passed. These are actual laws. What you guys are going for are guidelines and recommendations. So just imagine how that would held up in court. The 10 Commandment represents God's government over man. His system always results in liberty and freedom. Through the 10 Commandments, they are the moral principles that are contained in scriptures and that are to form the basis of all our civil constitutions and laws. Now that the complete opposite of that, of the 10 Commandments for God's government over man, we have the Communist Manifesto. This represents a misguided philosophy which teaches citizens to give up their rights for the sake of the common good, but always ends in police state. The control is to keep the concept. Sounds familiar? Let's all mask up for the common good, even though our children are healthy. We are the people. Where the people fear the government, you'll have tyranny, but where the government fears the people, you'll have liberty. Thank you.
Next is Ross Hilsheim.
Morning, everyone. My name's Ross. I have 4 daughters, and we live in Alamo. My wife and I saved probably 3 or 4 years worth of my income to move into Alamo so that we could go to this school district. I serve on 2 county commissions appointed by the Board of Supervisors. So I really appreciate your public service and the things that you do for our kids. Like as I mentioned, my kids are 2, 4, 6, and 8 years old. And in my opinion, the masks over the last 18 months has dramatically affected their lives, psychologically, emotionally, and with them playing with their friends. I noticed this at school last year. I noticed this at Hat McGee Park. I noticed this at the farmer's market with my kids and their friends. I personally am here representing myself and my 4 girls, and I don't support the mask mandate. So the next part of my comment here has to do with leadership. And I think each one of you ran to be on the board because you are leaders or you want to be leaders. And sometimes in order to be a good leader, you have to make difficult decisions. And this is a difficult decision that's been going on over the last 18 months. I want you to know that I will personally support you, and I think many people will personally support you to strike down the mask mandate. And actually, what the solution I would recommend would be, California has been a sanctuary state for many years. Different cities within this county are sanctuary cities regarding different federal laws. I think that this school district should be a sanctuary school district as it relates to mask mandates. Let us parents and our children choose for themselves if they want to wear masks. I hold no judgment for someone who wears a mask. I personally don't want to, and I can make that choice for my family. I guess the very last thing I would say is we don't want to show up and cause trouble and be difficult. We want to work together, and we actually like the freedom of choice. And as our leaders, we would ask you to act accordingly and please, follow our wishes. Thanks.
Next is Lacey.
My name is Lacey Hillis.
Lacey, I need to have you put on your mask.
Okay, so effective. My family moved to this area and spent way too much money on our home to get into this particular district with 10 out of 10 schools in an area we believed to be a nice little conservative community. Just 6 months later, school was canceled. I found myself Zoom schooling 2 lower elementary age school kids from home on a computer with an infant and a toddler to care for as well.
Lacey, I'm going to have to ask you.
My children do not know how to work computers and iPads, and this is by design. I've worked very hard as a parent to keep my kids' faces off screens. So when the shutdown came, it was nearly impossible feat to have them school on a computer. I knew school was going back into session the following year, and I knew my children's education, as well as mental and emotional health, would suffer if they were on Zoom for 6 hours every day. So a few friends and I hired a teacher to come to my home and school our children. We found ourselves paying what could have been a private school tuition because the public school system failed us. My children will never return to a public school. It is clear, a California public school, it is clear that you don't have the best interests at heart of the children. The California sex ed is atrocious and disgusting. Critical race theory is an absolute lie, and rewriting history is absurd. Not to mention the abuse and psychological harm that comes from wearing a germ-filled mask over their face all day. If masks work so well, why don't those who are scared just wear one or 2? Why are these young kids with blooming immune systems being treated like they are sick? It's absolutely child abuse, and the long-term emotional and mental effects are going to be horrific. If the vaccine is safe and effective, why don't those who are scared get it? If you get your vaccine, you're protected, right? Isn't that the logic behind a vaccine? So why are vaccinated people scared of healthy, unvaccinated people? If you can't admit how backwards all of this is, you're either evil or a mindless sheep. Before yesterday's mandate was announced, the California Department of Health has left it up to the school district to decide whether they're going to mandate masks or not. You come back with the answer that you're just following the public health guidelines, that's just an easy out. The guidelines have been that each district can make their own decision on whether or not they're going to require masks for students. Why haven't you been fighting for our students? Why haven't you been fighting for their safety? I implore you to dig deep and do your research. There have been studies that show all different kinds of bacteria and viruses that live in children's masks after only a half-day wear that are much more of a concern to children's health than COVID. Districts around the state have already decided to make masks optional. This is something that you can choose for our children. Please, I implore you, please put the children first. I'm already hearing rumblings about a shutdown coming in mid-fall. You have to know that this is not going to fly with pants this year. I want to warn you, just like the mass exodus of Californians, there will be a mass exodus of public school students, especially in areas of affluence where parents are able to find alternative education solutions for their children. I hope you are preparing for a lot less money coming.
Thank you
into
for your
district.
comments. That's 3 minutes.
1 second. And to all the teachers who are listening, be prepared to leave teaching these affluent, parental involved, lovely communities and be sent to a place like Richmond and Modesto.
Thank
Good
you.
luck there.
That's 3 minutes.
Okay, next is Danielle Silby. Danielle.
I'm ready. 6 years ago, when our youngest daughter was born, my husband and I sat at the table and talked about our 5-year plan. In that plan, we decided that when our oldest daughter was to enter high school and our youngest was to enter elementary, we would remove our oldest daughter from a private school and use that money towards a house in an area with better public schools. In April of 2020, just as the pandemic hit, we moved to Danville. From the moment our children are born, we are told that we know what is best for our children, whether they are breastfed or formula fed, co-sleep or sleep independently, cry it out or self-soothe, if they are tired or hungry, and what their emotional, physical, and mental needs are. This past year has been nothing but the government, CDC, California Department of Public Health, and the teachers union dictating what will and will not happen in regards to their education. Whether kids will attend school, how far apart they must stand, what face coverings are acceptable, the list goes on. We as parents have been left alone to figure out how to sort through our children's emotions while missing friends, having to learn online for hours a day, with daily routines being disrupted, all while trying to teach them how to deal with an ever-changing world in a pandemic. When they finally got back to school last year in person, we were able to see a huge difference in our children's well-being, once again showing us that as parents, we know what is best for our kids, in-person instruction. The one thing that our children did not feel a sense of normalcy with was a mask covering their face. Masking our children has made many physical and psychological effects on children. Looking at the number, the CDC estimates that 332 children have died from COVID in the past 18 months. They also estimate that 434 children died from the flu in a 12-month period from 2019 to 2020, and 600 children died from the flu during the 2017-2018 season. Currently, we're at a lower death rate for children, praise the Lord. Now, that's just the beginning. The New York Times found that children are about 10 times more likely to die in a car accident than from COVID. The Financial Times found that children are at less risk from COVID than vaccinated adults. However, the effects of requiring masking children and adults in general has caused mental health to skyrocket over 40% in recent studies, something that's rarely taken into consideration. Many effects have occurred due to masking and social distancing that have negatively impacted our children. They are becoming withdrawn, depressed, anxious. Their mental health has suffered, resulting in spikes of hospitalization, suicide attempts, and deaths. We are told our kids have to wear masks until we're all vaccinated, but we know now that being vaccinated, you will still get infected, which means that this will never end. Just as the seasonal flu, this is something we will have to get used to. Families went to Disneyland, they went to vacations and everywhere else without masks. And you're telling me they can't sit in a classroom with their same peers and teacher throughout the year with no masks? Let our kids breathe.
Next is Ben Mendoza.
Morning, trustees. So yesterday I learned that Contra Costa County was planning on instituting another indoor mask mandate. It was very disappointing, considering the progress made towards normalcy these past couple of months. My greater fear is that this is just a stepping stone for another lockdown, which was devastating for so many. I understand that you're not in a position to defy a mandate, but I also know you're in a position to represent the concerns of your constituents, like Dr. Malloy did last year when there were inconsistencies in the health policy. As a math teacher, I expect my students to show the evidence that they understand algorithms. It's nonsense that we should accept decrees from unelected public health officials without proof that the recommendations are effective, and it's just political theater to show the unwashed masses that they're doing something. My ask is that you please listen to our concerns and demand evidence from our public health officers. The University of Minnesota Center of Infectious Research and Policy Director, Dr. Michael Osterholm, who is who works with President Biden, stated in a July 30th interview with the New York Times that these surges have little to do with what humans do. Only recently with vaccines have we begun to have a real impact, unquote. He's talking about lockdowns and masking, and also about the Delta variant, which surged quickly and dissipated quickly in both India and in the UK over the course of about 2 weeks. The two counties have different vaccination rates and mask adherence. On August 2nd, Osterholm was also on CNN stating, "We know today that many of the cloth face coverings that people wear are not very effective in reducing any of the virus movement in and out of one's breathing." That was a quote. This is in line with what Dr. Fauci wrote in a February email. The typical mask you buy in a drugstore is not really effective in keeping out virus, which is small enough to pass through the material. It might, however, provide some slight benefit. I do not recommend wearing a mask. And this is consistent with all the studies the CDC has done for years and decades. Sweden schools did not close, their students did not mask, and most importantly, pediatric hospitalization and death rates remain low. This is my most important point. We claim we're doing this for the children. They're at risk. Well, they have a 99.9% good outcomes. That's the same percentage that was heralded in the news just yesterday for vaccines. So if it's good for the vaccines, why isn't it good for the children? They're not at risk. Sadly, children have died, but they're dramatically not at risk. Sorry, I'm just running out of time. Final statement. Does the benefit, which is minimal, outweigh the cost of the enforcement? Does this outweigh the cost of what our children have endured the past 18
Thank you,
months?
Mr. Mendoza.
Thank
3 minutes.
Next is Joni, and I'm sorry, Bruderson? Broderson. Yep.
Johnny Broderson. I am part of the MPRC, which is the Republican Party in this area, and I have been chosen to coordinate some people for interest in all this problems going on in San Ramon. I've lived here for 30 years. I have heard so many things that sort of took half of my message away, but I'm just going to state something for people here, which they probably know more than I do, and for myself. Watching a lot of different programs with the use of masks for kids, I'm against it for kindergarten on. I have grandchildren that age in other states. But breathing-wise, I know it's a problem. And I think this Let Me Breathe was a great idea. I have been doing some research, and there's an FOIA, which you know, Freedom of Information Act. I'm sure that some of you know this, and if you don't know it, this is a place to go. What we're doing right now. My arguments, confused by data and reason for kids. American books written here now, Mark Levine, but that's my choice on this thing. Last chapter he did on education, and he gave some toolkits. He actually has done some complaints. There is a rule that the union teachers, and I'm going up politically here, and hire teachers who are trying to possibly lock us down or keep us out of the schools or adding to these mask issues, are possibly not transparent. And in the IRS 990, there's a tax form website violating reporting uses of the money to subsidize tax by the taxpayers against these laws to the IRS. So a lot of their money that's going out is not to me for the good of the children. It's the good of the teachers, who many are still getting paid while the kids are at home trying to learn.
Joni, can I ask you to
Yes.
pull up your map?
Sorry, trying to slip. Okay. So my idea here, and they did this on their own, fight back, boycott, and use litigation. Topic question: why is it necessary for young children to wear masks in school? Children, unhealthy, lack of learning, breathing issues, self-esteem issues. Socialization. I did preschool for years. These kids learn to get along and socialize by going to school, not sitting at home. Need to release guidelines and data to be researched. Teachers do not want to teach CRT. Union heads running the show and the power is illegally not reporting how they're using your money. So fear factor preying on our families, deviant coming from illegal crossing at the border. I believe that many of these issues are causing the problems, and I have to say, I think the whole thing's political.
Next is Karen Shumway.
Hello, I am here to represent my personal experience in my family. I agree with so much that's being said. I'm so grateful for all of the people, especially the parents who have children here, that it's impacting, to come and share the science. I don't think the science supports our children needing to be in masks at all. But I'm going to talk about my personal experience. I have 5 kids, all of whom are in the district now, starting from high school. She'll be a freshman down to 1st grade. 5 kids. San Ramon, Charlottewood, Greenbrook Elementary. Last year was supposed to be my baby's first year, kindergarten. No way in heck was I sending her to sit in front of a screen for hours a day. Now, I'm grateful I have the opportunity to be home. So I homeschooled her, and I homeschooled my 3rd grader because that was more beneficial to us. I don't send my kid to kindergarten for the education necessarily that they're going to get. I send them for the socialization, for the interaction. She's going to be told she can't talk to her peers. She can't read facial expressions. She can't share crayons. What the heck are we teaching our 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, if they're not allowed to share and compromise, navigate at recess? School finally goes back in April. We get 2 months. Such a joke. We're trying to cram every high school sport into 2 months, making these kids wear masks, stuck behind screens. Mental health was already a crisis for our teenagers pre-pandemic. What are we doing to them? We are terrorizing them. So we go back for 2 months. We're trying to cram it in. Do everything. The kids don't have the stamina to fit everything into 8 weeks. It's a joke. I volunteered. I was at recess duty for the last 2 months. You see these kids running around with their masks on. Science doesn't support this. They are out in the air, in the sunshine, being trained to wear masks. We have lived in 4 states and 3 countries. We have peers and family and friends across the entire country and the world. We go home to visit family, and my kids see all of their cousins and friends doing school and sports. All last year, no masks. The whole year. We come here. My 6-year-old refuses to use the bathroom at a local pool because she didn't have a mask on. And I tried to explain to her, Mom has a mask. You're fine. No, Mom, I can't. I want to get people. You guys, we have created such anxiety and fear in these children. Garbage. My friend's son won't hug his own grandparents because he says, I don't want to kill you. What is this? It's a joke. And you can pretend we're following mandates, but until somebody stands up, and we're standing up, we're getting loud, but we need you to stand with us and make a difference and stop this, because there is going to be another mass exodus. And I mean, I can name 100 friends who have left the state of California. I pulled 2 of my kids out of the district last year. I don't want to do it again. Let them back to school. Let them breathe. Let them be kids. Thank you.
Next is Mike Arata.
As you heard, Mike Arata
I'm from Danville. With a new school year set to begin next week, I urge you once again to revisit and then to revoke your approval of the My Story, Your Story, Hexer Story, you pronounce it her story, high school course, as well as the deceitfully misleading Jason Reynolds book you've adopted for use by 7th graders. Among its numerous affronts, that book characterizes such vile, hateful, obscenely misogynist rappers as Slick Rick, Ice-T, and NWA as drivers of, quote, change and empowerment. Perhaps a public reading of their cop-killing and graphically rapist lyrics at another meeting will be needed to shake you from your lethargy. That is, a reading of the lyrics in such masterpieces of change and empowerment as Treat Her Like a Prostitute, Squeeze the Trigger, and One Less Bitch. So those are great avatars of change and empowerment for 7th graders, right? NWA, by the way, stands for Niggas with Attitude. That's how they pronounce it. Meanwhile, from authors Richard Delgado to Paulo Freire to Ibram X. Kendi, the books anticipated for use in your approved My Story, Your Story, Hexer Story course represent a who's who of race hustlers, Western Hemisphere Marxists, critical race theorists, and other subversives. And teaching critical race theory is an explicit objective of the so-called National Education Association. That's the radical union, along with its state chapter, to which nearly all of your teachers bear allegiance. William Galston, who's a liberal Brookings Institution fellow and former Clinton administration advisor, is among those who examined and exposed critical race theory, as you can see in his article among those attachments. Among other problems, notes Galston, CRT explicitly rejects equal opportunity in favor of guaranteed equal results, regardless of merit. Further, CRT, critical race theory, denies the possibility of objectivity. Perhaps most essentially, and quoting Galston, race theory is an explicitly left-wing movement inspired by the thinking of Italian neo-Marxist Antonio Gramsci. Hopefully, school parents and other taxpayers will themselves begin tuning into and then resisting the subversive racialist indoctrination which you're permitting to be targeted by teacher activists at captive audience school kids in the San Ramon Valley schools. Thank you.
Next is Courtney Cronin.
Haven't publicly spoken since college, so easily nice. I am a mother here in Danville, and I had one older child go all the way through the district in Greenbrook and Charlotte and Monte Vista, and I had one child who was supposed to start kindergarten last year. And like another friend that spoke, she did not do well with remote learning. But today I'm here to express my opposition to the mask mandate for our children. I am asking for transparency because, like some others have said, I desperately want to work with you. I am very appreciative that you stand up and do what you do, but I would like to see more transparency to the parents in these decisions being made. I see other public schools across the country deciding to support choice for parents. There are many public school districts that have already said that they will allow parents to make that choice for their children, like us to be one of them as well. So the transparency that I'm asking for, because we were one of the last states to open last year our schools. We were 50th in the country to open our schools. And so that data is there. Unlike the beginning of the school year last year, we have data to work with on children being vectors of transmission or lack thereof. So I would ask for the data that we are working off of how much transmission was happening in those schools with unmasked children, because we have access to that. So I would like to see why this decision is being made that greatly impacts our children. The story that was just shared about the child with anxiety, that is one of many that I am seeing with my friends. Their children are having tantrums at 6, 7, 8 years old over the mask wearing. It's not the only story. This is greatly impacting their mental health. My family friend is in a pediatric in Texas and has been for 35 years. He's also recovering from cancer, but he will be in the office every day with children and he is overwhelmed with the amount of mental health problems that he is seeing. And this is in a state that does not require children to wear masks. They never did with 10 and under. The entire last year in school, 10 and under did not wear masks. We have that data, and we deserve that data if you're going to be making these decisions for our children. And I will let you know my daughter is enrolled for John Baldwin right now, but she will be unenrolled if this is not a threat. I just want you to know that our parents like me who will be pulling our kids out of school because we don't want them to be in this environment. Thank you.
Next is Lisa Disbrow.
Good morning. My name is Lisa Disbrow. I'm a certificated public school teacher, and I'd like to classify myself as a civil servant. I'm not the parent of my students. I am their teacher. My goal is to create a warm, inviting, academically rich, safe environment for my students. I want you to hear from a kindergarten teacher what it was like to Zoom. It was so emotional watching my kids struggle, watching parents struggle, trying to resolve issues that were out of my control. I had kids crying, kids avoiding, I had parents screaming, I had parents drinking. I saw family conflict. And I was just trying to be a kindergarten teacher. It was horrible. I have to tell you, I cried a lot. I was so overwhelmed with the consequences of this terrible situation. When the opportunity came for children to return to the classroom, none of my students' parents elected to return. They did not want the distancing. They did not want the masking. And I just over and over again, you've been reminded about the science. The science is being ignored. The coronavirus and the Delta are minuscule. They're coming right through the openings in those masks. That's science. This is not preventative. There are other measures that are more successful. There are therapeutics. There's washing your hands. There's just staying home if you're ill. These are all available. And I want to say that to every school teacher, it is not our job to restrict the full and healthy functioning of our students. And I seriously cannot be held responsible, or I don't want to be in the environment where I'm enforcing a restriction on my students. I can barely survive with this dang thing on my face. My glasses fog up. I get brain fog. I start sweating. I'm miserable. And now I'm going to have to engage with kids who can barely speak above an audible level and are learning to read and write. Terrible, terrible decision making. Thank you.
The next is Melissa Austin. Melissa? Okay. Oh, she left. Okay. I'm going. Sorry, I thought she was outside. Okay, next is Scott Kaminsky.
My name is Scott Kaminsky. I live in Alamo. I have 2 children in the school district. I've been part of the community for 35 years. And I'm not here to quote law. I'm not here to quote science. I think all those people know a lot about that. I'm here to encourage you to, 1, be transparent, and 2, listen to what we want for our students. I had an opportunity, and I received a response email from Mr. Malloy. I asked Mr. Malloy a question. I said, I'd like you to be transparent, and I'd like to know how many teachers, administrative staff, students, and other people affiliated with the district have died from COVID, have been hospitalized, or who have tested positive. Mr. Malloy told me that he is not allowed to keep that information. So the first thing I'm asking all of you to do is to be transparent. Mr. Malloy, I don't believe there's a law that exists that says you cannot keep statistics on people in the district. So you need to find that. But I'm asking you to be transparent. I'm also asking you to make intelligent decisions and do so for the best interests of our children. We have lots of people here who are concerned about their children. We'd like for you to be concerned about our children also. So please be transparent. Please do whatever you can to make intelligent decisions for our children. And I don't want to threaten you like other people have said, but I think you will see a mass exodus if you don't do some of those things. Thank you.
Jill Seidenberg.
Good morning. My intent today was not to come and talk about masks at all. I've got 2 other issues I want to talk about. But I feel as a teacher at Monte Vista with 2 daughters at Monte Vista to express a different opinion. I'm okay with masks if it means I can be in a classroom with kids. I was ready to go back in November. I was ready to go back in January. I was in a classroom with kids the first day they showed back up on campus. And what I found with my students is that they didn't have a problem with masks. They wanted to be in class. And so for me, a parent, if it means my kids can be in a classroom with their teachers, for me as a teacher, if it means that I can have my kids in my class with me, masks, I don't care. Like whatever it takes to get kids in the room with me, I'll be willing to do. I was the first one to get vaccinated when I could. My kids were the first ones to get vaccinated when I could. And if that's what it takes, let's do that. Okay, leads into my second part, which is one of the concerns that I have in terms of the discussions that we're having and the decisions that we're making is that we're making global K through 12 decisions. And I think that if we looked at them in a K through 5 band, a 6 through 8 band, a 9 through 12 band, 9 through 12s have the ability to be vaccinated. 80% of my seniors by May 1st were fully vaccinated last year. K through 5 can't be, but they have a stable cohort. They have more outside time where they can run around. But if we could make decisions not as a K-12, but as the bands that have distinctly different abilities and, flexibilities and freedoms that they can have in there. So I'd like to just bring that as a plea. The third thing I'm here to talk about is completely unrelated to this. I'm a social studies teacher at Monte Vista, and we need to adopt new textbooks, like desperately, desperately. I was working with a new econ teacher, brand new out of her credential program last week, getting her ready to teach economics. As we were going through the economics book, we found a whole story about Jeff Bezos with a full head of hair and his fledgling idea of e-commerce. We had a whole page that was addressing this newfangled technology of how to send an email. I know my students have learned how to use email, moved way beyond it, and I would give anything if I could get them to check their email. So as I look at this, the other part, AP classes, we have all gone through multiple course redesigns since our textbooks have been adopted. AP World History has gone through 4 course redesigns. Our book doesn't resemble what we're teaching at all. And the last, I know, and I've got students who are going through looking at this as well in our equity team on campus, our textbooks do not reflect our students. And I think that there are many examples of how this doesn't is not working well. Anyway, time's up. Thank you.
Okay, our last card for public comment is William Dong.
Hi, hello. Good morning, everyone. I'm William Dong. I am a college student in this area. I am a Story Valley alumni student who recently graduated from Story Valley in 2020, and I had the privilege of having Mr. Hillman, Dan Hillman, and my principal BBA transfer for about 6 weeks of my freshman year before he got promoted to district. I just wanted to come here to speak about some problems over past year about school closures. I do not support school closures at all, or hybrid learning. Even for me, it's taken a huge mental toll on me over past year. It's just not cool. So I need promises to be kept. It's like when they said they would reopen on April 13th, they did not reopen, and then they didn't reopen in May, and then June, and then in August, and then in January, and then finally reopened in March. This is unacceptable. This is ridiculous. The San Ramon Valley Unified School District was step last to reopen your schools for in-person instruction out of any district in California or in the U.S. or in the world. So these students have suffered the most mentally, physically, and emotionally. We're sick of COVID fatigue, and I need you to promise, as we have agreed, to reopen to full-time in-person instruction 5 days a week, starting next Tuesday, a week from today. I need to emphasize this clearly that because we have a vaccine, because we have a cure from COVID, under no point should schools be allowed to ask students to quarantine or to go under a hybrid or remote model this quarter, even if COVID gets out of control like any. We are strong people. I think that if we mandate masks and we keep washing our hands, just like flu season during the winter, even if sick kids with COVID or whatever show up to class, it won't cause a risk to anyone else as long as proper protocols, including hand washing and masking, are put in place. We as the senior class were so sad that I think the district and the board really gave up on us when we lost out all of our senior events, including the Grand Disneyland trip, including our in-person graduation ceremony, when every other school district in the U.S. rescheduled for graduation. If you watch the news, all the UCs and CSUs are rescheduling their commencement ceremonies for class of 2020. They scheduled it in 2021, in May and June 2021. But we did it. And that's unfair on us. It's really devastating. It's really sad on us. It just doesn't work that way because we've worked so hard for these things and we deserve the same experience as all past graduating classes. So I just wanted to end off by saying that I'm very disappointed the district has given up on us and Superintendent Rick Schmidt promised that we will get these events and they didn't happen. So I really don't know what to say. I am very disappointed.
Thank you, William. That's 3 minutes.
Very much and have a good day.
And actually, I think there was one more public comment, under public comment, from Susan Lancaster, but she wished to speak in person, so we'll allow the board to read her comments. Okay. There's no more yellow cards for public comment. We're going to move on to 9.2, which would be the superintendent's report.
Thank you, President Ordway, and thank you to all of our families and community members who came out to share their voice with us here in person. And I also know because we are live streamed and we have received comments from those who aren't here, as well as through email, we are also hearing your voice as well. I will address some of the obvious points that emerged this morning, but because I know that our community is looking for a number of pieces of information from me, I am going to be a bit more global first regarding next Tuesday, and then I'll be more specific in relationship to some of the realities that just changed, as we know, yesterday, related to public health requirements. So first, I want by saying that next Tuesday, we are ready to welcome all of our students back to school. The majority of our students will be full-time, 5 days a week. A small portion of our students have chosen to attend our virtual academy, and if any of those students or families are listening, we promise an effective program in the virtual academy as well. And though we were hoping, and I think all of us can agree that we had some experiences this summer that would suggest that that concept called normal might be a little bit more than what we're experiencing right now, let me speak on behalf of superintendents, because we meet sometimes 3 times a week, as well as boards who I know you're in touch with, as well as our community who are organizing around all of these issues. We really wish we weren't here in the way we are. I'll speak for myself. I was hoping for something very different. I respect the views that are here. I also respect the views that are coming to us in other ways. And I wish the views aligned, but they don't. And that leaves you as our board with a real challenging role on how to navigate that, but more later. We are excited that our kids are coming back to school. We do our March, April, May, and into summer, that even with the restrictions, kids being on school in campus together and with their teachers and staff is amazing. And those school districts just east of us in Contra Costa who have started last week reported in a meeting that I attended yesterday with superintendents how even with the restrictions, there is great energy on our campus. Part of what we are also charged with is ensuring that we are not only inviting our kids back to school, supporting our kids in school, but keeping them in school. And therein lies another challenge that wasn't raised by our comments, but I'll share it with you and those who are here and those who are listening. One of the things we need to avoid is the concept of quarantine. Again, we don't control the rules around quarantine. We have absolutely no ability to change that. You can advocate if you don't wish, anyone can, but those decisions lie with the state and with the county, and I'll speak more about that in a minute. Keeping our kids uninterrupted in school has to be what we focus on. And when kids are diagnosed, which they are unfortunately even in the county east of us as we speak, that means kids and those next to them go home. And that's something that, again, we are paying close attention to because the energy of being on campus is what's key. Throughout the summer, we've worked to get our schools ready, maintenance, facilities, and we're excited about the fact that our schools are ready. We've already begun working with our administrators. We had a big retreat for 2 days just a week ago. The energy was palatable. This morning before our board meeting, I was at New Teacher U. All the new teachers and staff members who are certificated were involved in that very important morning. And of course, we are also welcoming our classified staff, and we will be ensuring their orientation as well. These are all positive signs because they didn't happen last year in the way in which they're happening this year. Our virtual academy will have approximately 750 students who have signed up for their program to be delivered in that way. And we are also, as you know from today's agenda, I won't go too far into it, we will be talking about the policies around that align with what the government expects. Our strategic directions, which were passed by you in June, will be our foundation and will continue to drive our work. And we're excited about that. And we think that that's going to assist our students as we broaden the definition of success on the foundation of academic excellence. So there's a lot that is positive. But let me speak specifically to that reality which I started. Part of what I can say being now a full year in the San Ramon Valley Unified School District is that I have always appreciated a couple of key components. One, a staff that cares about kids like I've never seen before, and I'm saying that in any exaggerated way. Our staff are there for our kids, period. We have engaged families who don't agree, and that is fine. But the way in which voices are shared, regardless of what's happening in this boardroom, it's good because the research is clear. When families are engaged, good things happen for kids. And that is second to none in the San Ramon Valley. The difficulty that is before us, though, is one that I've not yet been able to figure in the year that I've been doing this work. And frankly, because I network regularly at the county, at the state, and in the country, because we meet as superintendents, as you know, very regularly, this conversation, as it's happened today, is happening everywhere. Maybe different views, different perspective, depending upon which voices might be louder in our community, but louder, softer, we still have a job to represent all. So our reality is we do not, as much as we have heard otherwise, hold the authority to make a different decision. I have to repeat that. You do not have that authority. You can pass resolution should you want to advocate differently. And we've heard from those districts who have, and we've heard about those districts who have stated about the exemption. And I need to be clear that in a meeting we were called to yesterday, all private schools, all charter schools, all public schools must demand medical documentation for the exemption. It is. It doesn't reside with me. It doesn't reside with you. And what I've said to everyone who has emailed me, because again, today we're hearing very clearly from a very important perspective. And we're hearing very clearly from those who want us to wear masks outside. And I've said, no, we will do what we've done for the last year. We have never wavered in the face of any question. The response has been, we will follow explicitly the requirements of public health. Now, some would say that that's a cop-out. But the question that then you would have to grapple with is, as we hear the differing views on what is safe. So for example, just this morning, I received, you are going to demand masks outside. That's the other piece. And I said, no, we will not. Because public health says that's not necessary. So then our job is to get creative. Our job is to ensure we're using our outdoors because it's beautiful. Our job is to provide different learning opportunities for our kids so that they don't always have to be in this mask, but still be safe. And yes, to those who believe this is wrong, there is a process that is being challenged as we speak. The lawsuits have already been filed. But this board, you have to follow what has been said. If the law changes, we will and will gladly follow it. So when those laws and decisions are made, if they are, as I said, it is a law that is given to public health that this board must follow. And it is being challenged, and if it wins, then clearly there'll be different case law upon which a board makes a decision. But right now, we've been absolutely and clearly said, this is a must. So I state that whenever someone reaches out to us, this will be our message. We will follow public health requirements explicitly. We will not exceed those requirements unless you decide otherwise, but we will certainly fulfill them. And that when we talk about the science, I would say that that's one of the most challenging parts of this equation. Just yesterday in our meeting with public health, this was the superintendent's ask. We need for you, public health experts, to please be as explicit as possible regarding the science that you are using to determine these mandates. So for example, what testing strategy assists us to keep students in school, if at all? How will we ensure that the science, again, that you're using is understood by our community? The one thing I've said to anyone who asks me, including the media today, when they said, well, why don't you stand up and make a different decision? And there was a reference point around advocacy from last year. And let me clarify. What I recommended to you and what you directed was that we ask for clarification around the the physical distancing issue. My recommendation and your decision was not to change the physical distancing issue. It was to ask for that clarification. So similarly, in the spirit of advocacy, I, as your superintendent and all of the superintendents, are asking for that same type of assistance. So I'll close by saying, as I started, there were a couple of weeks this summer where normal felt a little different than now. The fact that some of our families are upset about it, I get it, personally. I'm sure you do too. The fact that some of our families want more from us in relationship to safety measures, I also get that if you're listening here as well. But I have to end my report by saying, as much as I can listen and respond and be compassionate around what those different views are, if we were to try to start making our own decisions around that, I do not know what it would be based on, and I do not know how we would actually facilitate. What I do believe is the ending part of my message, which is, as much as it may not be perfect, we've already learned in small groups, because not everybody came back in March, and we had a great experience with 4,000 kids this summer. Our kids need to be back on campus. They enjoy being back on campus, and it's our job as adults, professionals, educators, parents, working together with our staff to make it the best it can be, because the parameters have been set at the moment. As much as there's disagreement in the room with this last comment, you don't have authority over those parameters. However, within those parameters, we have a ton of control regarding how we proceed. And we are going to do our very best to use every strategy we have to help our kids have a great experience in our schools. So that, President Ordway, is my report for this morning.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? No? Okay. Then our 9.3 Association President's Report. And I see Tammy Castelluccio, our CSCA President.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It actually is still morning. I'm Tammy Castelluccio. I'm the president of the California School Employees Association, which represents our classified or support staff in the district. I would like to welcome everyone back to a much deserved summer break. We're looking forward to welcoming students back on campus next week. I would like to welcome LaTanya Williams, who is our new director of HR on the classified side. LaTanya and I have already met several times, and I'm looking forward to working with her and continuing to build a solid working relationship. Well, CSCA and management has already been at work on supporting our child nutrition department. We're working on an MOU to support the department in providing universal meals for all students. Currently, the department has 23 vacancies. Management is recruiting and hiring as fast as they can, but if there's anyone out there looking for a job, a rewarding position in our district, please apply. We're also working with management on an MOU for safety in the workplace for the 21-22 school year. We want our employees to understand that CSCA and management want them to feel safe coming to campus and welcoming the students back with the virtual open arms. We know that the last year was difficult for everyone, but we are looking forward to a positive and welcoming school year. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Okay. Moving on to action items, 10.0. Okay. 10.1, consideration of adoption of resolution 5/2122, approval of provisional internship permit or PIP requests. And, yes.
I was going to say, I apologize. Thank you, President Ordway. So as the board can see, we are requesting board approval through approval of this resolution to hire 5 individuals at the elementary, secondary level under a provisional internship permit, which we indeed do call a PIP. And it's basically one of the many iterations of what we consider to be an emergency teaching credential. Okay, we have posted, as you're well aware, all of our teaching vacancies on an internet-based source. We're required to market and make sure that prior to hiring individuals under a PIP that we have no fully credentialed candidate to assume the position. So we assure you that that's been done. We ask for the board's approval of the resolution. Thank you.
Okay, any questions or comments from the board?
Motion to approve.
Second.
The motion was made by Board Member Mintz and seconded by Board Member Hurd. Call out vote. Student Board Member Batra?
Aye.
Board Member Clark?
Aye.
Board Member Bratt?
Aye.
Board Member Hurd?
Aye.
Board Member Mintz?
Aye.
Board Member Ordway?
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Okay, 10.2, consideration of approval of board policy and administrative regulations, 6158, instruction for independent study. Yes.
Yes, thank you, President Orway. As we all know, Governor Newsom signed in Assembly Bill AB 130 into law on July 9th. Today, we would like to bring the board the administrative changes to board policy and the admin regulations 6158. Traditionally, we would have 2 readings of the BP and the AR, but since we have to have these approved before the first day of school, we have submitted into the board to consider the revisions. I also have Principal Rose Bright, who's joining us from our alternative school, who is our principal, and Nadine Rosenzweig, who oversees that program, to answer any questions that you guys might have or any clarifications surrounding the AR or the BP. So at this time, if you would like to ask us any, we are here to answer any and all questions that you have.
I just wanted clarification on how this relates to Virtual Academy and or Venture, like how that sits with those 2 programs.
Would you like to take that question, Principal Bright? Thank you.
Good morning. So the state of California has 2 ways that students can be counted in attendance. One is by physically being present in a classroom, and the other is through independent study. So the Virtual Academy students, as well as the students at Venture School and the traditional independent study program, fall under the attendance methods of independent study.
And this new policy applies to both.
Yes.
And then what, just from a scenario standpoint, what happens when a classroom of students has to go into quarantine? God forbid, we're hoping that doesn't happen. But do they then move into Venture, into Virtual Academy, into an independent study that's separate? And how does that apply to this? Is that, I'm seeing that that's kind of what this, partly what this policy is for, is to ensure that there's continued education for those that are being quarantined, or am I misinterpreting?
So independent study is a choice. We do have our Virtual Academy, and at this point in time, if students were to go into quarantine, we're in the process of working out the details of exactly what would happen. This would be an option for our family, but at this point in time, there might be other options as well.
Okay, thank you.
But that would be an individual choice for an individual student. It's not like the whole class moves into Virtual Academy. I think
Yes,
that's the correct
yes.
question.
Yes.
I had some questions and points to bring up. On page 2 of the board policy, or page 15 in our packet, there's a place where it defines of satisfactory educational progress in terms of students who are eligible to be in Virtual Academy. And I just think number 2, the one that addresses grades 6 through 12, would be more understandable if we added D- or better, because as it's written, it's wouldn't be clear if you were a B student and you wouldn't know, is this for me or not? So I'd like to entertain adding or better there. In the paragraph that follows that, it defines that the Virtual Academy must provide access to A to G courses. I mean, it's broader than what we talked about last April. And as I read that, I was like, oh, that looks better for our students who have made that choice in terms of ability for courses. So as I think about that, that seems like a big challenge staffing wise. So I just wanted you to explain to us what you have in mind there.
Sure, absolutely. So I'm going to have Rose and I both kind of share on this question, but you're absolutely correct, Trustee Hurd. That did change. So at this point in time, what we will be doing is working with our students so that they do have access to any local courses that are being held on the comprehensive school sites. Ms. Bright does have a process by which those students navigate currently within the alternative education system, and we'll be working with those students who want to individually share with us. Within the independent study, there are 6 classes, 4 of which they need to maintain with at their home independent study school, and then 2 that they can take concurrently at a home high school. so I can let Principal Bright add to anything that I may have forgotten as well.
You got it right.
Okay.
So it's not like all of a sudden we need to have a whole lot of different offerings at the virtual academy. It will be allowing them to do kind of a concurrent enrollment
Yes.
at a high school.
Yes.
And probably a high school is important, not their home school, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thanks. That clarification helps. In the AR, I had two things I wanted to ask about. On page 3 of the AR, which is page 25 of the board packet, the second paragraph from the bottom, I was curious about the provision that's there related to temporarily disabled student. And then when I looked at the referenced ed code, I saw that ed code section is related to home hospital. So I wondered if we needed to add something there to create some context for where that line comes from, because just out of the blue, it looks like it's kind of maybe even discriminatory. I also would like to entertain us just changing even how we phrase it from a temporarily disabled student to a student who is temporarily disabled, just to put the people first language.
You want to go ahead and address that clarification? You are correct. That is a home and hospital student. That is also referring to a student who may have broken their leg or might require more than an independent study. In some cases, we would maybe look to students who are 504 plan. But you are absolutely correct, and I think we can absolutely change that to student first language.
But it reads, and I guess I want to make sure of the intent. A student who is temporarily disabled, like say they're in a car accident and they've suffered a concussion, or even a soccer match, they suffered a concussion. Are they not eligible for the virtual academy, or is it that the IEP, or that they're not eligible for an IEP? It's just
It's
the way it's in there seems really out of the blue.
Students who are required to remain home by doctor's orders or to be hospitalized by doctor's orders are in ed code to be served in hospital instruction, and independent study cannot be used in lieu of home hospital.
Okay.
And so that's why that provision stands.
So I think we need an intro to that section that talks about a student who has temporarily been disabled by ed code needs to be served in home hospital, and that I just think otherwise it potentially looks like, where did this come from?
I think home and hospital would be an option, but there would also be options for the home school to explore. Could accommodations through a 504 plan also meet the student's instructional needs? So I'm a little hesitant to title it with anything specific at this point, but I can take that back and double check. But at this point, I know this is compliant with CSBA, and so we're trying to stay as close to that as possible, because it might not always fall under a home and hospital situation based on the temporary, the disability and what has happened.
Okay, so the crux of it is a student in this situation cannot be served in the virtual academy. I think we can say that, but I think we need to say where it came from so it doesn't look like it was our idea, because it sounds kind of mean without the context of the intent, right? And then the last was on page 5 of the AR, which is page 27 of our packet. It refers to responsibilities of the supervising teacher, and it looks like there may be a typo in there. It says DE and then space and then signing. I think it's just meaning to be signing the agreement, but
yes.
Okay.
So it should read completing designated portions of the written independent study agreement and signing the other.
Thanks.
So we will.
Any other questions?
Just a couple. One that I hadn't come up with for independent study, and it's not related directly to it, but based upon your answer about concurrent enrollment. So a student who is in independent study can be currently concurrent for other courses that aren't taught as independent study. And one clarification was just made was that's not just their home school, but the high school, for instance, where it's provided. Do we provide that same level for other students? A student who attends in person at one high school but wishes to take a class that's only offered at one of the other high schools, which would be an equivalent type of situation.
So to the first portion of your question, yes, they would be concurrently enrolled with the high school. And the reason we would first look to their home high school to see if there's space. If there wasn't, we would then look to surrounding high school. To answer the second portion of your question, no, necessarily. We would not have kids taking other courses across comprehensive sites. They would take the courses that are offered at their home high school.
The one option, the way we've addressed that in the past, is if a student wants to try to take a course that is not offered at the high school and they're in person and they're full time at that particular high school, we do have some options for the community college and some other ways for them to get access to courses that aren't offered at their home school. That has been our traditional approach thus far. For several years, we've had agreements like that with DDC, so that they can take courses and it goes on their transcript, and that's the way that we handle requests like that. We don't have the ability. We may in the future, but at this point and up until now, we have not had the ability for a student to be enrolled at, say, California High School and take a couple of classes in Monte Vista. Bell schedules is one barrier. There's some other logistical things that make that very difficult to do, but it is something that we can look at in the future.
Yeah, and my hope is, after to the remote situation, that maybe that is something that technologically in the future we'd be able to consider. So, particularly when we have situations where we have enough students at one of the high schools to be able to teach a class, or maybe we don't. But if it was through different high schools, we would be able to have enough students to be able to put it into a classroom situation. So definitely something to look at. I just want to make sure, though, that we weren't creating a situation where, from a comparability standpoint, the students who are in person are losing out on an opportunity that if you were in independent study, you'd be able to take advantage of. The other quick question I had in reading the policy, go back to the page real fast here. On page 15 of 68, it talks to independent study assignments shall be completed no more than 1 week after assigned for all grade levels and types of program. It then goes on to kind of say, well, no, if you've got some kind of a plan, then that it may be different than that. I'm thinking, for instance, if you have a semester-long project that you're responsible for, how does that fit in with this type of language that says that assignments are going to be assigned and be completed within 1 week?
So when an independent study teacher is making assignments, they are giving the assignment on a specific date with a specific due date. And so part of that has to do with the way attendance accounting happens, because it's based on work completed in relation to when work is due. So the attendance for that semester-long project would happen in the week when the due date happens, so they can do that. And then the teacher on a long project typically will have checkpoints, and so they can break it into smaller chunks that are within a week to ensure that ongoing progress is being made to address the concerns in the law about students who are engaging in independent study falling down.
Thank you. And in terms of the just the write-ups themselves, I noticed a couple of very, very small typos, like a comma where it doesn't belong, or a duplicate word, and I'll just pass those on.
Thank you.
Anything else? Any comments, questions? Yeah, no, I do appreciate those questions and clarification, especially with regards to like the short-term independent study. And because I was looking, I was like, oh, is it just for students in the hospital? If it, yeah, if we're looking at actually like by student by need, right? It's yeah. Then we're hoping to be able to support. Okay, great. I do have a public comment card for 10.2. William Dong.
Hello, William again. I have some comments and concerns about agenda item 10.2 about independent study. So I feel like with the independent study program and the quarantine thing, I don't support the students to be quarantined in case someone tests positive, because especially high school students who are more new and are tougher and stronger. I really feel like in case someone tests positive with masks and with most high school students probably not fully vaccinated, there's really no reason to quarantine. It's just ridiculous to have to think about the independent study process in the virtual academy for these students. And this is ridiculous, okay? And I really don't know what to say about this. And about the independent study and the quarantine for 10 days, I feel like this day I've sent a letter to Governor Newsom about this and to the state about this, and I really feel like at the state and federal level for independent study contracts, it's only for students who have suffering life threats and emergencies like illnesses or injuries that are prolonged, not for just not showing much symptoms and post-positive or maybe being asked to quarantine for 2 weeks. That's not fair. I think the district should go back to district attendance rules that were set 2 years ago, where students are allowed a maximum of 10 absences or 10 sick days for the whole school. I want this district to maintain a very high attendance rate, and I want the district to promote perfect attendance awards for students who don't end up missing school for a whole year. They should be awarded for this, and I don't want to promote any absences because I understand that every day a student misses school out of almost 31,000 student population, the district loses money. So with independent study and stuff like that, I don't want distance learning and hybrid learning, like students taking classes at the virtual academy, to be promoted. So I know about 750 students out of 31,000 students have signed up for a virtual academy this upcoming quarter, but I want the virtual academy program to stop in the future. We want everyone to be back in person. We already have Venture and Dalamigo as alternative education sites, and I think that's enough for this district at this time. My closing remarks is for Superintendent John Malloy to discuss about the virtual academy and if it will be offered in the future, which we hope not. I'm praying that that won't be offered anymore going forward. And with the independent study thing, I still want to emphasize the importance of being in class every day, even if you're feeling a little sick, unless if you're super sick and you need to be hospitalized, just like pre-COVID, like during the flu season. I would like higher perfected attendance incentives to come back in this way.
Thank you, William. That's 3 minutes.
I'm wrapping it up. I would like perfect attendance incentives to come back in this district. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.
Thank you, William.
And if I could just clarify Trustees Brett's question regarding I wanted to be clear. So the virtual academy is part of the alternative education program. Parents have the right to opt into that program and they become a student on that campus. If students were to quarantine, we do have other options for how we've currently been handling those students and how we will continue to handle those students. So I did not want I wanted to clarify the point around would a student or a whole entire class just automatically be pushed into the virtual academy. That would not be what that environment is for. That is an environment for parents to opt into. And when they opt into that, they are removing their child from their home school. They are enrolling in our virtual academy. So I just did want to clarify that. That was a great question. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for clarifying.
Can I ask just one other quick question? Just in terms of numbers, we heard that virtual academy about 750. Do we know about how many students are signed up for?
I think we have approximately 80 students currently enrolled, and then we have some students who have applied recently who are in transition into Venture.
Okay, do we expect to see any change, major change in those kind of numbers? Or are we seeing more that the independent study, the academy has kind of taken over a lot of that need?
I think to some extent the virtual academy has met some of that need. It will be hard to tell because typically independent study enrollment increases in the months of August, September, and October. And so as we move into fall, as students and families make different choices about what will best meet their needs, we'll see whether they're applying to venture or if they've already managed to get their needs met by enrolling.
And just one other quick question, and maybe this is more tangential, but in terms of families that have decided to homeschool, we provide them support, I believe, through our independent study office. Is that correct in terms of providing materials and things of that nature, or they're completely on their own?
Our independent study is not the same thing as homeschooling.
Oh, I understand it's not the
And
same.
we don't have a homeschooling program in this district.
Okay, so when a family decides to homeschool, are there regulations that they must follow? And is there any enforcement through our district, or is that enforced through a county or state level requirement?
If a family wants to homeschool, they can choose to join a homeschooling school. So there are some schools that are charters or attached to districts that support homeschooling families, or they can apply to be certified by the state as a homeschooling school of their own, and there are requirements that they need to go for that.
Do we have any responsibility in terms of mandatory education for local students?
Not that I know of, no.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions?
I had a quick question about the independent study option. So in the case that a student does test positive for COVID-19, would they be automatically moved and be following all of these protocols under the ones over 15 days? Or
That's a great question. The answer would be no. So there's kind of two separate things in the policy, the independent study. There is independent study, and then there's short-term independent study, which has traditionally been used for when families want to take a vacation, when people are going out of town. If a student needs to quarantine or is ill, we have separate ways that we are going to be handling that, much to how we handled at the end of last year, where the teacher might be providing work, the student might be working individually with their teachers or their school site around gaining the work, but they would not be placed in a virtual academy. But to some degree, they would be receiving all of their work, but they wouldn't necessarily be a part of this AR this week.
Okay, I'm sorry. So one more clarification then. With the definition of synchronous learning and the requirement for person-to-person coverage, I know we've had venture students in the past who are in that program with our district, but are living abroad, for instance, or are professionally engaged somehow and are not personally in our district physically. So do we meet those person-to-person through online requirements and things of that nature as opposed to physically in person?
Yes, the definition that the state provides in AB 130 defines synchronous learning and allows for that to be face-to-face, over the computer, or over a telephone. So we can meet the needs of students who are away from the area because of some other thing that has them doing independent study, whether it be show business or a family need to travel for parent work or whatever reason it is that the family is not currently in place.
Okay, great, thank you. Just want to make sure to clarify. Since we're going through it, and there's a lot of changes, I know, to this particular policy. With that, I have to make a motion to approve with the suggested changes that have been put up.
I'll second. Was made by Board Member Mintz and seconded by Board Member Hurd. Call out vote. Student Board Member Bratt?
Aye.
Student Board Member Batra? Let's try that again.
Aye.
Laura was made.
Aye.
Board Member Clark?
Aye.
Board Member Bratt?
Aye.
Board Member Hurd?
Aye.
Board Member Mintz?
Aye.
Board Member Ordway?
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
10.3, consideration of requests to adjust the daily rates of pay for substitute teachers for the 2021-2022 school year. Yes.
Thank you. So as the board will recall, at this meeting on March 30th, I requested and the board approved a temporary increase in the daily substitute rate for substitute teachers in response to some adjustments that had been made in districts in the local area. We needed to ensure that we had a sufficient number of substitutes to address the needs of our students when their teachers were not able to be at school. That worked actually very well last year, and I think that I have shared some statistics with you as well around substitute requests and substitute positions filled, etc., for the last couple of months of the school year. We have maintained communication with Alameda and Contra Costa school districts throughout the summer to gauge where substitute rates are being set for this year. And as you're aware, our greatest competition for substitutes among districts is basically among the Tri-Valley districts, meaning Pleasanton, Dublin, and San Ramon Valley. So many of our substitutes are on all three of those lists. So in looking at actions that have, in some cases, already been taken by boards of education or that are being presented to boards of education, we believe that our substitute rates should be adjusted for the 21-22 school year to the levels identified on the cover sheet. That we believe will make us competitive with other districts in the area, and most specifically with the Tri-Valley school districts, and will allow us to continue to fulfill our substitute needs on a daily basis. So we're asking at this point that the board approve these rates for the 21-22 school year, with the understanding that toward the end of the year, we will continue to have conversations with local school districts and specifically Contra Costa districts to find out what their plans are moving forward to make sure that we are in a good, solid, competitive place. Okay, so recommendation is to, again, increase the rates as indicated for daily substitutes as well as certificated retirees to the level indicated.
How are we doing as we go into start of the school year?
So we're doing very well. We were fortunate, and I think partly it had to do with the fact that we increased the rates. Our substitute pool, as of the last few weeks of school, for certificated substitutes, is about 600 individuals. And that's a pretty large number. I remember it was quite a bit smaller than that during the year I came to the district, which was 2015-16. So we were able to build the pool. Because of the growth that we are putting into place and vacant positions that we still have, we will be using substitutes where needed to make sure that there is a teacher in front of all groups of students starting the first day of school. And I believe that this will help us to make sure that that happens.
Any other questions?
Yeah, do you have a rough estimate on like the budget implications? So the overall increase in cost annually with this increase in daily rates?
Yes. So, and that's something that whenever that type of question comes up, and in preparation for this meeting, I tapped into my colleague over on the right here, who basically looked at substitute rates. So correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Medici, but we typically run somewhere in the neighborhood of about $2 million per year for certificated substitutes. So what we did was the approximate percentage increase that we are applying to the base rates, which started originally at $130, and now the base rate will be $175 per day, and basically extrapolated from there. So Greg has estimated that this will be a one-time cost of about $750,000 this year, assuming that the substitute rates for this year are commensurate with the substitute usage in the last few years.
Thank you.
Unless there's more questions, can I have a motion?
I have another question.
Oh, sorry.
So, since we are looking into being competitive with the other neighboring school districts, I was wondering what is their range of rates on the 1 to 61?
Very good question. So the $175 a day would be at parity with both Pleasanton and Dublin. Actually, our rates and Dublin's rates are identical to what you see in the board agenda. And what Pleasanton has done, I believe, is they've established their rate as 1 to 10 days, $175. And then starting at day 11, that increases to $200, but they don't go beyond that level. Okay. And I'll share with you that the Acalanes district and the Walnut Creek district on the other side of us are in the process of adjusting their rates to similar levels.
Anything else? Then can I have a motion? Okay, yes, go ahead.
Question. So do the other districts also, for example, you mentioned Pleasanton has a different way on a daily basis. how much they're going to pay, but do they also have the delineation between daily substitutes and
Good question. Based upon the latest information that we have received, they do not have a retiree employee rate. They have a base rate regardless of whether that person is a retired employee, is a fully credentialed substitute, or happens to be working on a substitute permit.
Okay, and what is our reason for having it?
It's a very good question. My superintendent asked that question a couple of weeks ago. So what happens a lot with substitutes is our retirees, by and large, are familiar with the school district. They're familiar with their schools. And in many cases, teachers who retire from our district first and foremost want to substitute at the school from which they retired. So quite honestly, because they know staff members, they know procedures and those types of things, we just really want to honor that experience and that expertise by providing them a premium daily rate.
Anything else? No? Can I have a motion then?
So moved.
I'll second.
The motion was made by Board Member Clark and seconded by Board Member Bratt. Call out vote. Student Board Member Batra.
Aye.
Board Member Clark.
Aye.
Board Member Bratt.
Aye.
Board Member Hurd.
Aye.
Board Member Mintz.
Aye.
Board Member Ordway.
Aye.
The motion passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Moving on to, all right, 12.0 administrative matters. So board report. Board member have a report. We can start with Ronick, our student board member.
Sounds good. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you all for being here. So as you know, today is my first day serving on the Board of Trustees, and I must say that it's been a truly gratifying experience. Since the board last adjourned in June, I have been working to lay the foundational elements of my role for this year. I met with Superintendent Malloy, President Ordway, and Mrs. Fisher in order to get acclimated with the role and understand my responsibility. I also made sure that I would be ready to hit the ground running come August 3rd. I would like to express my gratitude to the three of them, but also thank all of the other trustees in helping me begin today. I've also begun to work to expand the presence and reach of student voice. In setting up the Student Senate with Mr. John Campagliano, Mrs. Tammy Castelluccio, and Risha Jain, we have received responses from over 130 passionate middle and high school students from across our district. We've set up an application process consisting of a short answer and interview section, and we will have a fully functional student senate for the 2021 to 2022 school year by the start of next week. With 3 members from each high school and 2 members from each middle school, I will work with the student senate to gauge the opinions and the holistic and the wants and needs of the holistic student body, advocating for that at each. Additionally, in an effort to bring forth the voices of students who often go unheard, I plan to meet with individuals from a variety of affinity groups, including the BSU, Black Student Union, MSA, Muslim Student Association, and many others along those lines. I also hope to meet with leadership students, student athletes, English language learners, and special needs children from each school. And in the coming months, I will visit multiple SRVUSD campuses at all levels in order to gain understanding about the campus culture and dynamics and gain student feedback on what they feel could be going better. Overall, my main priority will be to advocate for the student voice on this board, and through all of my work and activities, I will be doing just that. So thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to the work that I will be doing over this following school year.
Great. Thank you, Ron. Shelley, do you have anything to report?
Well, I just wanted to say how much I enjoyed the administrative retreat that we were invited to for the day. It was really, first of all, it was really great to be in person and be able to actually see people and hug people and make connections, especially as we start the school year. And the energy there was so positive, and it was really exciting to see how everybody is excited about the strategic plan and is ready to get started to support our students in the upcoming school year. So that was really a highlight for me. I also worked with Deb Pettish on responses to the petition, and we were able to respond to the petitioners over the summer and give them some answers to some of the questions they had, much of which is incorporated in our strategic plan. So I'm excited about that work going forward also. And setting up all of my committees and meetings as the school year gets started. So really that's it for me. Took a little bit of a break this summer, but looking forward to getting back to work.
Great, thank you. Laura?
I want to say welcome to Ronit. I'm so excited that you're here. I really love having that student voice, and I'm excited to hear what you're planning to do in terms of really digging deep into the broad spectrum of students. I think it's really exciting, so thank you. And then I also want to give a big shout out and great job done for our student schools. Two of my kids were in summer school, and it was a great experience for them. I had an opportunity to be on campus and look in on the classrooms at San Ramon Valley High School, needle my own kids, which was fun, and just the the environment, the level of energy that was happening there. It was really nice to see the smiles and the perspective of really focusing on that mental and social emotional wellness, like for example, in the math class that my boys were in, she taught math, but she also talked about how you can use it and how you can really just build back that engagement, that I think was lost, at least what I saw with my students. So it was really nice to see the kids in the quad and having their lunches and interacting and stuff. So that was great. So thank you for everyone that had a part in that. And then we had a traffics meeting, and the passes are being sold, which is exciting. And I don't know if they're sold out yet. I don't think so, but yeah, but they're being sold. They're fully staffed with alternates, which is great. They have all the routes. And I know Danny was a big part of helping to make that work, which was great. So thank you. And then just a note to those families that aren't serviced by traffics. There is a program with, I think it's county, Pass to Class, where you can apply. All you have to do is ask, send an email. There's links, I think, that go through. I think you can find it on actually the school site websites, and it takes you to the county, or just Google Pass to Class. But it gives you free passes for the county buses, so you can get your students to school that way as well. So.
I would like to echo the welcoming for Ronit. It has been a long time coming to have a single school board member sitting in that seat representing all students. And I wonder if we may look back on this as a silver lining of COVID about how we kind of became one student body, district-wide. Ken and I have had many conversations over the years about a desire to bring that student voice, but in a really meaningful way. And I just think it's wonderful what you described, the interaction with the student senate and with other affinity groups. I love how you put that. And I think this is a huge step forward. And I'd like to thank Dr. Malloy and John Pompiano for finally making this happen. It's just wonderful. I'd also like to echo Shelley's remarks about the retreat. It was fabulous. I love how we dug into the strategic directions. We tackled the challenges that will happen in terms of how does this flow down to the individual school sites. And I just really wanted to congratulate Christine's whole staff on, clearly a lot of fabulous planning. And it was so great as board members to be able to sit with the principal site teams and interact with them and get a taste of the things that they think about and worry about and the big picture stuff about education, which is really why we're all here. Laura and I are both on the traffics board. It's been wonderful that program was able to continue, that we continued to fund it through the tax dollars, and we didn't lose drivers. And it was so gratifying to read the update we got last Friday about the pass sales are doing so well. So thank you, Danny, for the work you do on TAC. That makes a huge difference. That's all I have.
Just a couple quick things. First, Ron, welcome, congratulations. Can tell from your presentation just now, you're really hitting the ground running, and quite frankly, exactly the type of thing that we're hoping for. So any way that I can help you, I'd be more than happy to go through things with you. But I really appreciate the all-encompassing way that you're jumping into this role, and I can tell immediately we picked the right person for this spot. So congratulations. I'm looking forward to your year in this role. The other thing is I'll put staff a little bit on not a hot plate per se, but one of the things that we covered in our consent calendar under the contracts over $50,000 had to do with food services. And I'm just wondering, since it's going to be something of a change given the state budget, if we can have just a quick conversation about what that actually looks like for students who choose to have lunch, or are we going to have box lunches? Are we going back to full food service that everyone can pick what they just so that, you know, here publicly we can give people an idea of what to expect.
If possible, why don't we actually prepare a report for the next meeting? We have a new director and it's a new program, and we will be organized and be able to bring it at that point.
I'd really appreciate that. I think that the timing at the start of school year, or particularly with the changes at the state level, that would be worthwhile. Thank you.
Okay. And echoing everyone, welcome on it. This is great, because that's what we're here for, is to see how our decisions and policies affect students. So we do need a student voice. I'm really happy, actually, even though I was not expecting, of course, like everyone else, to start this meeting, gosh, like a week ago. I was thinking, oh, no problem, right, without a mask and stuff. But even though I have to sit here with a mask and remember to really talk into the mic, I am very grateful that I'm sitting close to my colleagues and everyone, so that there is still a sense of connection in a different way, right? And for me, I think that, yeah, to your point, Dr. Malloy, that I don't want to, speaking personally, I want to avoid, right, the shutdown as like last year. So I think that in, preventing that risk with some precautions like mask wearing and sanitizer, I mean, all the safety protocols that are in place, I think that's going to help us, right? And again, very grateful that, even going back in the mask, there is no physical distance requirement right now for us or our students. I'm looking forward. Had a great session with that the 2-day or the management retreat, but also looking forward to welcoming our new staff to our district. So later on this week. So yeah, that's it for me. So. Is there anything else? I know you already gave your superintendent's report, Dr. Malloy, but is there anything else you'd like to close us with?
I think that's all I have to add today. But as we keep saying, we're really excited for the new school year, even with the challenges that we may encounter.
Great. Okay, with that, then we are adjourned.